you guys. This is one of the continuing series of how to add and end thread in various stitches. And today I'm going to talk about herringbone stitch. Certain stitches I do just weaving back and forth. Things like peyote stitch is perfect for that. Same with right angle weave, although I kind of go back and forth with right angle weave, whether I tie a knot or I weave back and forth. With herringbone though, it's a looser stitch and it has kind of a weird thread path. And you never want to create a new thread path when you are adding or ending thread, because especially in herringbone, where the threads are what is causing that distinctive herringbone V tilt to the beads, you don't want to screw that up, because if you screw the thread path up, what's going to happen is those beads are going to sit like little soldiers instead of drunken soldiers. And it's going to look a little funny. You're going to be able to tell where your thread added and ended. So instead, what we're going to do is tie knots, and let me show you how to do that. Here is a little sample of beadwork that I made, just plain herringbone stitch using some size 8 seed beads. The color that this is, because I always get questions, is Hybrid Metallic Hazelnut. It is a size 8 in YPS75. I'll just make a note that those hybrid beads, any of the ones on my website, which is Jill Wiseman Designs, any of those hybrids are limited edition beads, and so you may, if you fall in love with a bead, you may want to stock up a little bit, because I may or may not be able to get them again, okay? So what I'm doing here is looking at this piece of herringbone, and this is what I mean about the thread path being a little weird. I've just finished this row. Notice how instead of the thread coming out of the row that I just added, which is kind of normal, it's coming out of the bead below it. The other thing to notice, and I don't know if you can see it well enough, I'll kind of pull these apart, see if you can get some shadow here. The thread comes here at the base of the bead. That's how it's connecting on this column. But then on this next column, it's connecting at the top. So you really don't want to screw that up, and it's difficult to navigate by just weaving around in the beads to do that. So here's my trick instead. First rule, I never end off my old thread before I've added my new ones, because I need to know where this thread, the new thread, needs to come out. And in this case, it's the second row down, coming down. So let's make sure that the new thread does that. So here is the new thread. The easiest way to keep yourself out of trouble here as you're doing the knots is I just pick one column and stick with it, and I go straight up or straight down the column. When I end this off, I'm just going to keep going straight down this outside column. Because I want to add a new thread, I'm going to go up the column next to it, and when I get to this bead here, I'm going to be able to go across the top of these two beads. You can see where the thread is attached right there, I think. There you go. You can kind of see that the thread's across that top. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to bring it across the top. It'll come down out of this bead, and that'll be exactly where I want it to be. Okay. So I'm just going to pick a spot. Doesn't really matter. I want to do at least 3 knots. My general rule of thumb is 2 to 3 knots, but I basically almost always do 3. So I'm just going to pop through a couple of beads. Doesn't matter whether it's 2 or 3 beads. And I'm going to pull this down so that I've got a little bit of a tail left to hold on to. Okay. So now here I am. I want to tie a knot right here. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take my needle. There's already thread that's attaching these two beads together where I'm coming out. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to loop underneath the beads and catch that thread right there. And that's what I'm doing right there. Catching that thread. Now I'm going to pull this thread. Notice that I'm still holding on to that tail because I don't want to accidentally pull that out. I'm pulling it very slowly, because I had this huge loop, right? And I want to bring this loop down till it's very small. The slower that you pull that, you're going to keep yourself out of trouble. There's a couple things that can happen. This can knot prematurely on you, like you can get a knot out here. which is a pain in the butt because then you have to get the knot out where you didn't mean it to happen. It can twist and tangle on you. So you want to do this slowly so you can catch those things before they happen. And they're less likely to happen if you do it slowly. Here's the other thing. I'm going to bring this down to till there's a really small loop right here. And the reason I'm doing that is because if I'm going to pass my needle through here to create the knot. If I did it when the loop was really big and then pulled it, you're almost for sure going to get a knot way out over here and not right down next to the beads the way you want them to be. So give yourself a little loop to go through. Doesn't matter whether you go front to back or back to front. Just pop your needle through there. Make sure it's not catching on anything. Okay, so now that's you can actually see where the knot is right here. And as I pull that, again, I'm pulling it nice and slow, and I'm making sure it's collapsing right down into that intersection where I want it to be. So I think my number one rule is do things slowly. You don't need to rush it. You'll get yourself in trouble if you rush it, okay? And as somebody who has gotten myself in trouble more times than I care to tell you, this is the formula for success, is doing it slowly and small loop when you put your needle through. Okay, so that's knot one. That is what is called a half hitch knot. Now I'm going to pass through a couple more beads on my way straight up that column. This time I just happened to pop through 3. It's less important now that you hold on to this tail thread because you've got a knot there that's already taken care of that. My working thread is the original, the old thread, is trying to get involved. Don't want that to happen. So let me get him out of there. Hey, you're not cooperating. Go through the loop that you weren't supposed to go through. And get out of the way. Okay. See, if I'd held that behind the beadwork, then I wouldn't have had that problem. Okay. So there we go. So we just went through those 3 beads. We didn't tie any knots. We just started our way up. Let's do another knot right here. This time I'm going to teach you how to do a surgeon's knot. It's almost exactly the same as the half hitch knot. So we're still going to just loop under the beads that are there to catch that thread. We're going to pull down nice and slow. We're looking for any craziness that it's trying to do. It is doing a little bit of twisting on me, so just in case, I'm going to untwist, pull it down so that I have a small loop there. Okay, I'm going to pass through it once. That's my half hitch. To make this a surgeon's knot, we just pass through that again in the same direction that you did the first time, because if you pass through it the opposite way, you'd undo the knot. Now, a surgeon's knot is more likely to prematurely knot on you, so you really want to watch it and make sure that it is not doing that to you. There we go. Surgeon's knot is a little more secure than a half hitch knot. So if you're really concerned about it, you can do the surgeon's knot. Then, that was my second knot. Let's do one more knot. I'm going to pop up through 2 this time. We'll just do a half hitch this time. So under the threads, hello. Trying not to actually stitch myself to the beadwork. I've actually done that before where I went through so shallowly through that top layer of skin that I actually stitched myself to the beadwork. Yeah, I'm special. Okay, so then we brought it down, so we've got a nice small little loop there. I'm passing through the loop. And then I'm closing that down, making sure that it doesn't catch on anything, and voila. All right, so now all we have to do is get it in position because we've done 3 knots now, and there's no way that sucker's coming undone. And so I want to pass up through the beads, so I'm coming out the top, right over here. Let's see here, so I'm here, we're gonna go up through 3 to get through, so I'm coming out the correct bead. Like so. Now I can go down this 1 bead on the outside edge as if I were making this stitch. There we are. And now we've got both the new thread and the old thread coming out of the same spot. If you look down this column, look, there's no change in how the beads are sitting. They still have that herringbone V all the way here. We do have this little tail here. That's what I used to hold on to when I was adding the thread. So I'm going to snip that right off. And then all we have to do is take the old thread and end it. And I'm not going to do it all the way, but I'll show you that all I have to do is come straight down this column. So I'm going to go a couple of beads away from where I originally was, making sure I'm not catching on anything. It's even easier to do the knot on the outside edge. Just going to catch the thread in between the beads that are right there. You can see it a little bit, but it also wants to move a little bit more. So I'm kind of making sure that it's right in that intersection as I'm pulling down to make my little tiny loop, pass through the loop. You can see where I'm kind of trying to keep it, I'm putting my finger over that intersection to keep it from jumping around on me as I close this all down, which makes it hard for you to see, but it makes it easier to make sure that it closes where you want it to. And then you would just continue down a couple more beads, make another knot, continue down a couple more beads, make another knot. You actually do not want to cut off right next to a knot. So after you've made your last knot, keep going down a couple more beads and then cut your knot. I'm sorry, cut your thread. Don't cut the knot, just the thread. You're going to do the same thing with your tail thread. Just pop up a column. That is going to make sure that your herringbone is super secure. Herringbone's kind of a loosey-goosey stitch. That's why I like to do the knots. And I also don't want to deform any of the thread path. So knots are your friend when you are working with herringbone. Happy beading!